Do you ever think about those Christmas movies from the 1970s that felt like family traditions, the ones so woven into December that imagining the holidays without them seemed impossible? These films shaped how an entire generation understood the season, filling living rooms with warmth, wonder, and characters we thought would last forever. So what happened to make them vanish so completely? The year. Without a Santa Claus in its original broadcast cut was the kind of holiday event that stopped everything in the house the moment it flickered onto the screen. Families planned their evenings around it, adjusting dinner times and gathering on couches with blankets pulled tight against the December chill while the tree glowed softly in the corner. The Miser Brothers were instantly iconic, their musical numbers so catchy that kids sang them for weeks afterward, turning schoolyards into stages for off-key performances that drove teachers absolutely mad. Parents loved it too, finding humor in the sibling rivalry and the gentle absurdity of a world where weather was controlled by bickering magical beings dressed in flames and frost. But behind the scenes, the music rights grew tangled as original agreements expired and estates demanded costly renegotiation. Licensing disputes turned what seemed like a permanent fixture into a legal puzzle no broadcaster wanted to solve. When networks quietly stopped airing it, families noticed but never fully understood why. Today, the original cut remains locked away, a casualty of contracts that outlived the people who signed them. Rudolph's Shiny New Year was the kind of sequel that felt less like a cash grab and more like a gift to children who could not get enough of their favorite reindeer and his glowing red nose. The story took Rudolph far beyond the North Pole, sending him on a quest to find a lost baby called Happy, who held the fate of the coming year in his tiny hands. Strange islands appeared, each one stranger than the last, populated by characters who seemed plucked from a fever dream of holiday cheer and ancient mythology blended together. Kids watched with wide eyes as camels, whales, and a terrifying vulture named Eon chased Rudolph through landscapes that looked nothing like anything else on television at the time. But years later, the character rights became a battlefield as multiple studios claimed ownership, estates intervened, and lawyers replaced animators as the people shaping Rudolph's future. Streaming platforms passed on the title rather than untangle the mess. What was once a beloved adventure became a cautionary tale about intellectual property, locked behind legal walls too high for nostalgia alone to climb. Nestor, the long-eared Christmas donkey, arrived in living rooms with a gentle sincerity that caught many families completely off guard during its original broadcast. The story followed a small donkey ridiculed for his oversized ears, wandering through a harsh winter landscape until destiny placed him beneath a star and beside a manger in Bethlehem. It was unmistakably religious, unapologetically sentimental, and surprisingly moving for a stop-motion special aimed at young children watching on a cold December night. Kids connected with Nestor's loneliness and eventual triumph, while parents found themselves wiping tears during scenes they had not expected to hit quite so hard. Churches recommended it, and families added it to their annual traditions without hesitation or question. But as broadcasting standards shifted, Nestor quietly slipped off schedules across the country. Religious content became a liability rather than a selling point, and the special's overtly faith-based message made programmers nervous. No major streaming service picked it up, and home video releases grew scarce as contracts lapsed without renewal. The Stingiest Man in Town from 1978 brought Charles Dickens into living rooms through animation that felt handcrafted and deeply personal in ways modern productions rarely achieve. This version of A Christmas Carol leaned into musical numbers, filling Scrooge's journey with songs that lingered long after the credits rolled and the screen went dark. Kids who had never read Dickens absorbed the story through melody and color, humming tunes about misery and redemption without fully understanding the weight of the words they sang. Parents appreciated how the special handled darkness and hope in equal measure, never shying away from the ghostly warnings. It became a quiet favorite, never as famous as other adaptations, but fiercely loved by those who discovered it. Then the studio that owned it collapsed, swallowed by mergers that scattered its catalog like leaves in a winter storm. Rights transferred to entities with no interest in holiday specials, and the paperwork needed to release it simply never materialized. The stingiest man in town became a ghost itself, haunting the memories of viewers who swore it existed even as evidence disappeared. Pinocchio's Christmas took a familiar character and dropped him into a holiday setting that felt both magical and melancholy. The wooden boy wandered through snowy streets, longing for a family Christmas he feared he would never have, while catchy songs and colorful animation kept children entertained even as the emotional stakes rose higher than expected. Parents watched their kids fall in love with Pinocchio all over again, this time wrapped in tinsel and surrounded by carolers who seemed to step straight out of a Victorian greeting card. The special aired regularly for several years, becoming a quiet tradition in households that appreciated its blend of whimsy and heart. But Pinocchio himself belonged to a complicated web of international copyright claims, with different countries holding different rights to different versions of the character. When broadcasters tried to negotiate reruns, the licensing demands came from so many directions that no deal could be reached. The special vanished from schedules, replaced by programming with cleaner ownership trails. Today, Pinocchio's Christmas exists in a legal gray zone, loved by many but accessible to almost no one through legitimate channels. The Little Drummer Boy Book. 2 continued a story that many families considered sacred, following the boy and his drum into new adventures that tested his faith and his courage. The animation carried the same reverent tone as the original, treating its religious themes with sincerity rather than irony, and children responded to the quiet power of the narrative. Parents appreciated how the sequel expanded the world without abandoning the spirit that made the first special so beloved. Churches screened it during Advent services, and families slotted it into their December viewing schedules alongside the original as a matched pair. But music rights proved to be the undoing of this gentle sequel. The songs that made the special memorable required licenses that expired and were never renewed, and the cost of renegotiating those rights exceeded what any broadcaster was willing to pay. Networks simply stopped airing it, and home video releases dried up as distributors let contracts lapse. The Little Drummer Boy Book 2 faded into obscurity, a continuation that most people forgot existed until someone mentioned it and the memories came flooding back. Jack Frost from 1979 gave winter itself a face, a voice, and a love story that enchanted children who had never thought of the season as anything more than cold and snow. The Rankin-Bass version turned Jack into a romantic figure, willing to sacrifice his immortality for a chance at human love, and the bittersweet ending left many young viewers confused but deeply moved. Parents watched their children grapple with themes of loss and transformation, surprised by how much emotional weight a holiday special could carry beneath its cheerful surface. The songs stuck in heads for weeks, and the imagery of Jack dancing across frozen landscapes became iconic for those who saw it during its original broadcasts. But the contracts that allowed those broadcasts eventually expired, and negotiations to renew them collapsed under demands from multiple parties claiming pieces of the production. Streaming services passed on the title, home video rights stalled indefinitely, and Jack Frost himself seemed to melt away from public memory. Fans who remember it speak of it with a reverence usually reserved for lost masterpieces. The Leprechauns' Christmas Gold tried something ambitious by blending Irish folklore with holiday traditions, creating a world where magical creatures and Christmas miracles existed side by side in ways no other special had attempted. Children loved the novelty of leprechauns appearing in a Christmas story, and the animation had that familiar Rankin-Bass warmth that made everything feel cozy and safe during cold winter broadcasts. Families added it to their rotation, enjoying the change of pace from reindeer and snowmen, and the special aired for several seasons without controversy or complaint from viewers. But as cultural awareness shifted, critics began pointing to certain characterizations as outdated and potentially offensive to modern audiences. The accents, the stereotypes, and the broad comedic strokes that seemed harmless in the 70s now raised concerns that networks preferred to avoid entirely. Rather than edit or contextualize, broadcasters simply stopped airing it, and the special disappeared from schedules with little fanfare. Today, it exists in a strange limbo, neither officially banned nor officially available. The First Christmas. The story of the first Christmas snow wore its religious heart on its sleeve, telling the nativity story through animation designed to inspire faith in young viewers across America. Churches loved it, religious schools screened it during December assemblies, and families who wanted their children to understand the spiritual meaning of the holiday embraced it without reservation or hesitation. The special made no apologies for its message, presenting the birth of Christ as the central event of the season and expecting audiences to receive it with reverence and quiet reflection. For years, it aired alongside secular specials, offering families a choice that reflected their own beliefs about Christmas. But as public schools moved toward stricter separation of church and state, screenings in educational settings became impossible to justify legally. Networks, wary of alienating secular viewers, gradually reduced its airtime until it vanished entirely from broadcast schedules. The special that once represented Christmas for millions became inaccessible, restricted to private collections and church libraries. Cricket on the Hearth adapted a Charles Dickens story that most Americans had never read, transforming it into an animated musical that charmed children with talking insects and heartfelt songs. The cricket himself became a beloved character, his chirping wisdom guiding human characters through misunderstandings and reconciliations that resolved just in time for a happy holiday ending. Families discovered it by accident during channel surfing, fell in love with its peculiar warmth, and made it part of their December traditions without hesitation. The voice cast delivered performances that elevated simple animation into something genuinely touching, and kids quoted lines for years without knowing they were quoting Dickens. But the agreements with those voice actors contained clauses that expired without clear paths to renewal. When the original performers passed away or their estates became involved, the legal complications multiplied beyond what any distributor wanted to navigate. Cricket on the Hearth hopped quietly out of circulation, leaving behind fans who remember its songs and wonder why something so lovely could simply cease to exist. Frosty's Winter Wonderland tried to recapture the magic of the original Snowman special by giving Frosty a bride and expanding his frozen world into something even more elaborate and colorful. Children loved seeing their favorite snowman find love, build a family, and face new challenges that tested his cheerful spirit against the forces of melting and forgetting. The animation sparkled with that classic holiday charm, and the songs were catchy enough that kids hummed them through January and beyond. Families recorded it on VHS tapes and played it alongside the original, treating both as essential parts of the December viewing experience. But when the original creators passed away and their estates became involved in the business side, everything changed dramatically. Multiple parties claimed residual rights, arguing over percentages and permissions that had never been clearly defined in the original contracts. No streaming service wanted to wade into that legal swamp, and home video releases quietly stopped. Frosty's Winter Wonderland melted away from public access, surviving only in the memories of those who loved it and the aging tapes they treasure. 'Twas the Night Before Christmas from 1974 turned a beloved poem into a full animated adventure featuring a town of mice and a clockmaker racing against time to restore Santa's faith in their village. The Rankin Bass production brought warmth, humor, and surprisingly catchy musical numbers to a story that could have been simple, but instead became something families treasured year after year. Children learned the words to songs they did not fully understand, belting out lyrics about clocks and letters, while parents smiled at the earnest performances happening in their living rooms. The special became a staple of holiday programming, aired reliably every December until suddenly it was not. Music licensing costs climbed steadily as the decades passed, and eventually networks decided the fees exceeded what the ratings could justify. Rather than pay the escalating royalties, broadcasters quietly dropped it from their schedules and replaced it with cheaper alternatives that owned their music outright. Today, tracking down a legitimate copy requires effort that most casual viewers will never invest, leaving the special stranded between beloved memory and accessible reality. The Small One told the tender story of a boy forced to sell his aging donkey, only to discover that the animal's final journey would lead straight to a stable in Bethlehem on the holiest night of the year. Disney produced it with care and reverence, creating animation that felt gentle and sincere in ways the studio rarely attempted with religious material. Children who watched it often cried, overwhelmed by the donkey's loyalty and the boy's heartbreak, not fully understanding why the ending was supposed to be happy until their parents explained the significance of where the journey concluded. Churches adored it and requested copies for their holiday programs, treating it as one of the few mainstream productions that honored the Nativity without compromise. But as Disney's corporate strategy evolved, explicitly religious content became something the company preferred to avoid promoting heavily. The small one never disappeared entirely, but its releases became limited, its presence in streaming catalogs sporadic, and its place in the Disney holiday canon quietly diminished. Families who remember it often discover their children have never heard of it at all. Raggedy Ann and Andy in The Great Santa Claus Caper brought the beloved rag dolls into a Christmas adventure filled with villains, rescues, and the kind of gentle chaos that made Saturday morning cartoons so appealing to young audiences. The animation had a handmade quality that matched the characters perfectly, making everything feel stitched together with love and thread rather than cold corporate calculation. Kids cheered as Ann and Andy outsmarted the bad guys and saved Christmas through courage, cleverness, and the power of friendship that never faltered. Parents appreciated how the special taught values without lecturing, wrapping lessons in entertainment that children actually wanted to watch again and again. But the Raggedy Ann franchise changed hands multiple times over the decades, with each transfer creating new complications in the rights to various productions. The Christmas special fell through the cracks during one of these transitions, its ownership unclear, and its distribution rights tangled beyond easy resolution. No company wanted to invest the legal resources needed to untangle the mess, so the special simply stopped appearing anywhere legitimate. The Christmas Raccoons introduced characters who would later star in their own beloved series, but this original holiday special had a charm that the later episodes never quite recaptured in the same innocent way. The animation was rough but heartfelt, the environmental message woven through without becoming preachy, and the raccoons themselves were instantly lovable in their determination to save their forest home from destruction. Canadian families especially embraced it, treating the special as a homegrown treasure that reflected their own values and landscapes during the holiday season. American viewers who stumbled across it during late-night broadcasts often became devoted fans, searching for reruns that rarely appeared on their side of the border. The problem was that Canadian and American broadcasting rights were negotiated separately, and the agreements that allowed cross-border airing eventually expired without renewal. Legal tangles kept the special locked in its home country, while American fans could only reminisce about the raccoons they had loved so briefly. Today, finding a copy requires navigating international distribution complexities that most viewers simply cannot manage. Casper's First Christmas brought the friendly ghost into holiday territory with a special that blended his usual gentle scares with festive cheer and lessons about friendship that transcended the boundaries between the living and the dead. Children who loved Casper's regular adventures delighted in seeing him navigate Christmas traditions, make new friends, and prove once again that being different did not mean being alone during the most wonderful time of the year. The animation was simple but effective, carrying the same warmth that had made Casper a beloved character for generations of young viewers seeking something spooky but not too frightening. Families added it to their rotation alongside other holiday favorites, trusting that Casper would deliver the same gentle entertainment he always provided. But when the Casper franchise changed corporate ownership, the new stewards had different priorities and different visions for where the character should go in modern markets. The Christmas special did not fit their plans, so they quietly discontinued it, rather than invest in keeping it available for audiences who might still want to watch it during December evenings. A Snow White Christmas reimagined the classic fairy tale princess in a holiday setting that felt both familiar and fresh to children who thought they knew everything about her story already. The animation took liberties with the source material, adding winter wonderland settings, new songs, and plot twists that kept young viewers guessing even when they recognized the characters from Disney's more famous version. Parents appreciated having an alternative that entertained their kids without requiring another viewing of the same film they had already seen dozens of times before. The special aired for several holiday seasons, building a modest but loyal following among families who discovered it during channel surfing expeditions through December programming blocks. But fairy tale adaptations exist in complicated legal territory, and claims eventually surfaced that this particular version borrowed too heavily from protected elements of other Snow White productions. Rather than fight costly legal battles over a holiday special with limited commercial potential, the distributors simply withdrew it from circulation entirely and moved on to safer content. The Bear Who Slept Through Christmas followed a curious bear who refused to hibernate because he desperately wanted to experience the holiday everyone talked about, but he had never seen with his own sleepy eyes. Children connected instantly with his determination and his wonder, watching him discover Christmas lights, presents, and carols for the very first time while fighting the urge to curl up and sleep through it all. The animation was cozy and warm, perfectly matching the gentle tone of a story that never raised its voice or rushed toward unnecessary conflict or drama. Families loved how peaceful it felt compared to more frantic holiday specials, treating it as the perfect wind-down viewing before bedtime on cold December nights when sleep came easily. But the small studio that produced it closed its doors in the early 80s, and no larger company stepped in to acquire the rights or maintain distribution of its catalog. The Bear Who Slept Through Christmas simply drifted away, unavailable through any official channel and surviving only in the fading memories of viewers who caught it during its brief original run. A Special Christmas took the prehistoric comic strip characters and dropped them into a holiday story that mixed caveman humor with surprisingly thoughtful reflections on faith, tradition, and the meaning of celebration itself. The animation translated Johnny Hart's distinctive art style reasonably well, and the jokes landed with children who loved seeing familiar characters navigate situations that felt both ancient and timeless at the same moment. Parents who read the comic strip appreciated the adaptation, enjoying the chance to share something they loved with children too young to follow newspaper funnies on their own. But the special's treatment of religious themes eventually drew criticism from groups who felt it mocked beliefs rather than honored them through its prehistoric parody framing. Advocacy organizations complained loudly enough that networks decided the controversy was not worth the modest ratings the special delivered each December season. Rather than defend it or edit it, broadcasters simply stopped airing it and let the complaints fade into silence along with the special itself. The Christmas Messenger told a quiet story about delivering holiday hope to those who needed it most, wrapped in animation that felt handcrafted and sincere in ways mass-produced specials rarely achieved during the busy 70s production era. Children watched with wide eyes as the messenger traveled through snow and hardship, proving that small acts of kindness could transform entire communities when offered with genuine love and selfless intention. The special aired only a handful of times, always sponsored by a single company that believed in its message and paid for its broadcast as a gift to family audiences during the holiday season. Parents who caught it often remarked on how different it felt from the flashier, louder specials that dominated the airwaves, competing for attention with bright colors and celebrity voices. But when the sponsoring company withdrew its support due to changing marketing priorities, no replacement stepped forward to fund continued broadcasts or home video distribution. The Christmas Messenger delivered its final message and then quietly disappeared, leaving behind only scattered memories among the few families fortunate enough to have witnessed its brief journey. Ziggy's gift captured the melancholy charm of the beloved comic strip character and placed him in a Christmas story that hit harder than anyone expected from a bald, round-headed everyman. The animation was simple but emotionally effective, following Ziggy as he tried to spread holiday cheer despite facing setback after setback in a world determined to crush his gentle spirit. Children watched with a mix of sadness and hope, rooting for a character who never gave up even when everything went wrong. Parents appreciated the deeper message about perseverance and kindness, finding themselves surprisingly moved by a cartoon they had expected to be light entertainment. The special won an Emmy and earned critical praise, but that success did not protect it from the business realities that followed. Syndication deals that kept it on the air eventually collapsed in the late 80s as networks restructured. No streaming platform picked it up, and home video releases became increasingly difficult to find. Ziggy's gift became another casualty of changing times, beloved by those who remembered it, but invisible to newer generations who never got the chance to discover its quiet power. The Gift of Winter was one of those specials that seemed to exist more in memory than in any verifiable archive. A gentle, animated story about the changing seasons and the magic that arrives when the world turns cold and still. Children who watched it remember soft colors, quiet music, and a sense of wonder that felt different from the louder, busier specials competing for attention on other channels. The animation had a dreamlike quality that made it feel less like television and more like a bedtime story whispered by someone who truly believed in the words. Parents who caught it remarked on how calming it felt, a welcome contrast to the holiday chaos that filled every other hour of December programming. But the studio that created it went through multiple mergers and acquisitions over the following decades, and somewhere in that corporate shuffling, the master tapes were misplaced or mislabeled. No one realized what had been lost until fans began searching for it years later and found nothing but dead ends. The Gift of Winter became a ghost story told among collectors, a special that people swore they saw but could never prove existed at all. The Christmas Tree Train followed a group of children who embarked on a magical journey aboard a train carrying Christmas trees to families who needed them most. The animation was warm and inviting, filled with snowy landscapes, twinkling lights, and the comforting rhythm of wheels on tracks that lulled young viewers into a state of cozy anticipation. Kids loved the adventure and the sense of purpose the characters carried, feeling like they were part of something important even while sitting safely in their living rooms. Parents appreciated how the special celebrated generosity and community without becoming preachy or heavy-handed about its message. But concerns eventually arose about scenes depicting children near railroad tracks, climbing aboard moving cars, and navigating train yards without adult supervision. Child safety advocates pointed to these moments as potentially dangerous modeling for impressionable young viewers who might imitate what they saw on screen. Rather than edit the special or add warnings, the network simply discontinued it, and the Christmas Tree Train rolled quietly into obscurity where it remains today. Santa Bear's First Christmas introduced a cuddly character designed to sell toys as much as tell stories, but somehow the special transcended its commercial origins and became something children genuinely loved. The animation was bright and cheerful, following Santa Bear as he discovered his purpose and learned what it meant to bring joy to others during the most magical season of the year. Kids adored the character and begged for the stuffed versions that appeared in stores alongside the broadcast. Parents appreciated that the special, despite its obvious merchandising intent, actually delivered a heartfelt story with genuine emotional moments. But when the toy line was eventually discontinued due to declining sales, the marketing agreements that kept the special on the air expired without renewal. No company saw value in promoting a character whose merchandise no longer filled shelves, so Santa Bear's First Christmas quietly vanished from broadcast schedules and home video catalogs alike. Today, it survives only in the memories of children who loved a bear that the business world decided was no longer worth remembering. A Christmas Carol from 1971 offered yet another animated adaptation of the Dickens classic, but this version had a distinctive visual style and vocal performances that set it apart from dozens of other versions competing for holiday airtime. The animation leaned into shadow and atmosphere, creating a genuinely eerie take on the ghostly visitations that felt more unsettling than most family-friendly adaptations dared to attempt. Children who watched it often found themselves genuinely frightened by the spirits, which made the eventual redemption of Scrooge feel earned rather than inevitable. Parents appreciated that the special did not soften the story's darker edges, but the estate controlling certain adaptation rights eventually raised claims that this version exceeded its original licensing agreement. Rather than fight expensive legal battles over a decades-old special, the distributors simply restricted its availability and moved forward with newer adaptations. The 1971 Christmas Carol became one more ghost haunting the memories of viewers who wished the past could visit them once more. Christmas with the Groovy Ghoulies was unlike any holiday cartoon before or since. Imagine a group of cheerful monsters celebrating Christmas as if they were hosting a rock concert inside a haunted house decorated with twinkling lights and plastic snow. The Ghoulies sang, danced, cracked jokes, and somehow made the spooky season work perfectly with the festive one. Kids adored the bright colors and silly humor, while adults enjoyed the surprisingly catchy songs. It was chaotic, lively, and exactly what 70s animation did best: embrace the weird and make it fun. But the special relied heavily on music owned by multiple companies, and when those rights expired, the whole production was yanked from circulation. Attempts to reissue it ran into legal snarls that turned the special into television folklore. Today, it survives mostly as a nostalgic whisper among fans who remember the joy of watching monsters celebrate Christmas like the world's friendliest house band. If the 1980s loved anything, it was big families and bigger laughs, and just the 10 of us delivered both. A spin-off of Growing Pains, the show followed Coach Graham Lubbock, his patient wife Elizabeth, and their 8 children as they navigated life, love, and laundry in one hilariously overcrowded household. The humor was as chaotic as the family itself. Kids shouting over each other, teenage drama exploding daily, and a father just trying to keep his sanity intact. But beneath the madness was genuine warmth. The Lubbocks weren't perfect, but they were full of heart. Each child had a distinct personality, creating a colorful mix of relatable family moments and slapstick fun. The show managed to balance wholesome values with the quick wit that defined the decade's best comedies. It wasn't about perfection, it was about perseverance, with a punchline. Just the 10 of us captured what it meant to find joy in the chaos, reminding viewers that no matter how noisy life got, family always came first, even if you had to shout to be heard. Yogi Bear's Lost Christmas Caper was one of those blink-and-you-miss-it specials that aired in only a few regions and at odd hours, usually sandwiched between local commercials and late-afternoon reruns. It featured Yogi at his most optimistic, wandering through a snow-covered Jellystone park with Boo Boo at his side, both of them determined to help Santa with a sudden holiday emergency. The animation had that classic Hanna-Barbera bounce, where characters slid across the screen instead of walking, and mouths flapped enthusiastically without always matching the words. Kids loved it anyway. Yogi tried to deliver presents, borrowed a sleigh that definitely did not belong to him, and got chased by a series of increasingly frustrated park rangers. Boo Boo, ever patient, offered gentle advice that Yogi ignored every single time. Families watched it once or twice before it vanished. Because it was a regional broadcast, no major studio stored the master reel, and reruns depended on whichever local station happened to have a usable copy. By the 1990s, most of those copies were gone. People still argue about the exact plot, but everyone agrees on one thing. Yogi dressed in winter gear stumbling through the snow is a memory too delightful to lose completely. When Gimme a Break hit television, Nell Carter brought an energy that instantly stole the spotlight. She played Nell Harper, a tough but loving housekeeper who stepped in to help a widowed police chief raise his 3 daughters. What could have easily been a standard sitcom about domestic life turned into something so much more because of Carter's powerhouse personality. Her sharp wit, quick timing, and soulful voice made every episode sing, sometimes literally. The humor came naturally, but what made the show special was its heart. Nell wasn't just cleaning a house, she was holding a family together. The daughters brought their own teenage chaos, while the father tried to maintain control, and Nell balanced it all with sass and compassion. The show tackled serious topics, from grief to growing up, without ever losing its warmth or laughter. Carter's performance was magnetic, giving the show both comedy and soul. Gimme a Break captured the spirit of the 1980s by blending sharp humor with genuine emotion, proving that family didn't have to be perfect to be strong. Every wisecrack and heartfelt moment reminded viewers that love could make even the most chaotic household feel like home. Deputy Dawg's Christmas Snowstorm arrived on television with that laid-back Southern humor the character was known for, wrapped in a blanket of winter mischief. The animation was simple, the jokes were cozy, and the characters moved with the slow, gentle pacing of a holiday morning when nobody is in a rush to do anything. The plot usually involved a snowstorm blowing through the swamp, sending Deputy Dawg scrambling to keep holiday decorations from drifting away and trying to prevent his friends from creating even bigger messes. Kids loved the gentle humor, the warm voices, and the way the snowfall looked like tiny cotton flakes drifting across the screen. But as decades passed, broadcasting rights grew tangled, and some of the humor was deemed too outdated to air again. Reruns vanished, home releases never materialized, and the special slipped quietly into obscurity. Today, only those who caught it during a lucky afternoon rerun remember its soft charm and slow-moving magic. The Great North Pole Talent Show was a musical spectacle that played out like a holiday variety hour hosted by elves who had never rehearsed anything in their lives. Reindeer performed tap routines, snowmen attempted comedy acts that melted halfway through, and penguins delivered songs with so much enthusiasm that the audio sometimes distorted. One unforgettable act involved a gingerbread quartet that crumbled apart mid-song, yet somehow finished their performance. Another featured an elf magician whose trick succeeded only because the animation occasionally skipped a frame at the right moment. Kids watched in awe, not because the acts were polished, but because anything could happen on that tiny Frosty stage. Kids loved the playful chaos, and adults chuckled at the goofy charm of it all. The background shimmered with glittery blues and whites, giving the whole special a frosty glow. But the show relied heavily on a soundtrack packed with original songs, and the music licensing fees ballooned over the decades. Networks refused to pay the renewal costs, and the special was withdrawn from circulation entirely. Today, people who remember it recall the laughter, the wobbly stage performances, and the feeling that anything could happen during that talent show in the snow. In Charles in Charge, Scott Baio played the world's most patient college student/babysitter, living with a suburban family and helping raise their kids while keeping his own life on track. Charles was the cool older brother everyone wished they had, laid back, responsible, and always ready with advice that somehow made sense even in chaos. Every episode revolved around him juggling teenage drama, romantic mishaps, and his own college responsibilities without losing that relaxed grin. The humor came from his attempts to stay calm amid the madness, a skill that made him the rock of the household. The show reflected a softer side of 1980s sitcoms, clean, upbeat, and centered on family values. It didn't try to reinvent comedy, it just made people feel good. The catchy theme song, "New Boy in the Neighborhood," became a little anthem for a generation that grew up with Charles as their moral compass. Charles in Charge was simple but sincere, a feel-good snapshot of 1980s optimism where every problem could be solved with kindness, patience, and maybe a cheesy grin. Josie and the Pussycats. Holiday Road Trip sent the band on a snowy cross-country musical adventure filled with bright costumes, catchy jingles, and plenty of cartoon hijinks. The group traveled from town to town, playing cheerful holiday concerts and solving small mysteries along the way. There was a scene where the band performed on a moving sleigh that somehow stayed perfectly in tune despite the wind blasting past their faces. The animators took full advantage of the era's love for bold color palettes, turning every moment into a postcard of 70s style. Even the snow looked groovy, sparkling in shades no real winter has ever produced. Melody cracked jokes, Valerie saved the day with clever ideas, and Josie kept everyone moving forward despite holiday chaos following them like confetti in the wind. The animation style leaned into bold colors and expressive poses that made even simple scenes feel dramatic. Kids loved the blend of music and adventure, while adults enjoyed the upbeat retro soundtrack. But when the show's overseas distribution deals expired, reruns quietly disappeared. The holiday episode slipped into that strange void where content exists only in the memories of those who watched it at the perfect moment. Fans still hum its long-lost songs even though no recordings remain. The Christmas blizzard of Bongo the Bear was a regional treasure, the kind of holiday special only a handful of families ever got to see. Bongo lived in a snowy forest that looked like it had been painted on frosted glass, and his gentle personality carried the story as he tried to protect his woodland friends from a blizzard that arrived just before Christmas Eve. Kids loved the friendly animals, simple jokes, and the warm tone that felt like someone reading aloud from a beloved picture book. But because the cartoon aired on a small regional station, it never reached nationwide syndication. Tapes were reused or misplaced, and local copies did not survive. Today, only those within that broadcast area remember Bongo's brave, cozy adventure. Mama's Family took its roots from a sketch on the Carol Burnett Show and turned it into a full-blown sitcom about a sharp-tongued matriarch named Thelma Harper. Played by Vicki Lawrence, Mama was a walking storm of sarcasm, stubbornness, and slapstick humor. Living in small-town America with her eccentric relatives, she dealt with everyday chaos in ways only she could, by yelling, fussing, and ultimately loving her family through it all. The show combined quick one-liners, outrageous misunderstandings, and over-the-top Southern charm. Every argument felt like a comedy showdown, with Mama always getting the last word. Despite its wild tone, Mama's Family had a genuine heart. Beneath the snark and shouting was a relatable story about families sticking together through thick and thin. It captured small-town life in all its messy glory, funny, loud, and endlessly entertaining. Vicki Lawrence's performance anchored it all, giving Mama just enough warmth to balance the sass. Decades later, her blue dress and gray wig remain iconic symbols of 1980s sitcom gold. There was a brief moment in the 1970s when someone decided the live-action holiday film The Christmas That Almost Was Not deserved an animated remake, and so it was born. The animated edition had a quirky, bouncy energy, as if everyone involved was trying to squeeze every last drop of whimsy out of the original story. The characters were redesigned with rounder faces, bigger eyes, and more dramatic gestures that occasionally drifted into unintentional comedy. The villain looked slightly less menacing and slightly more confused, and Santa Claus had a habit of nodding his head in a looping animation that made him appear unusually agreeable. The songs, reimagined for animation, were catchy in that delightful but slightly off-key way only 70s soundtracks could achieve. Although the special aired a few times during holiday marathons, it never found the same loyal audience as its live-action predecessor over time. The master tapes were shuffled from one storage space to another, caught in a cycle of network changes and distribution reshuffling. Eventually, the animated remake slipped out of circulation entirely. People who watched it as children describe it with the kind of fond uncertainty usually reserved for dreams, vivid in feeling, fuzzy in detail, and oddly comforting. Yet, finding proof of its existence is almost impossible now. It is one of those specials that lived briefly, brightly, and then drifted quietly into television folklore. Few sitcoms captured pure joy quite like Perfect Strangers. When Larry Appleton, a serious young man chasing the American dream, suddenly found himself sharing an apartment with his exuberant, naive cousin Balky from the fictional Mediterranean island of Mypos, the culture clash was comedy gold. Balky's broken English, unfiltered optimism, and constant misunderstandings clashed hilariously with Larry's control-freak tendencies. Together, they made a pair that could turn even the simplest situation, like grocery shopping or dancing, into a masterpiece of physical comedy. What made the show work was its heart. Beneath the endless laughs and catchphrases like, "Don't be ridiculous," was a friendship that showed how differences could make people stronger. It was silly but sincere, reminding audiences that kindness and patience could overcome anything, even a goat-herding cousin who thought everything in America was magical. The show's upbeat tone made it perfect for the 1980s, when optimism and big dreams were part of pop culture's DNA. By the end of its run, Perfect Strangers had cemented itself as a symbol of laughter, friendship, and the weird but wonderful chaos of trying to belong. Before the polished, heartwarming Berenstain Bears specials of later decades, there was a humble little first attempt at bringing Bear Country to animated life. The Berenstain Bears' first holiday animation had all the charm of a storybook being translated into motion with crayons, patience, and maybe a few cups of hot cocoa. The lines were thick, the colors slightly muted, and the characters moved with that slow, deliberate pace that made it feel like someone was turning the pages for you. Mama Bear offered gentle advice that sometimes echoed a little too loudly through the mono audio. Papa Bear, in all his enthusiastic clumsiness, tried to hang decorations and inevitably made a mess of the living room. Sister and Brother Bear scampered around in winter scarves that never seemed to stay in one place. Kids watching did not care that the animation stuttered or that the snow looked more like confetti drifting lazily downward. They cared that the bears felt like a family they already knew from bedtime stories. But when more polished versions arrived in later years, this original disappeared almost instantly. Licensing deals changed. Newer productions overshadowed the old one, and the first holiday animation slipped into the shadows of forgotten archives. It exists now mostly in memories, whispered about by fans who swear they saw a simpler, softer bear country once upon a Christmas time. Few shows embodied the cozy, middle-class charm of 1980s television quite like the Hogan Family. It began as Valerie, starring Valerie Harper, as the matriarch of a typical suburban household, but when she left the show, it continued with Sandy Duncan stepping in as Aunt Sandy. The transition was surprisingly smooth because the real star of the show was the family dynamic itself. The Hogans were a down-to-earth bunch, dealing with teenage sons, work, school, and everyday drama, with humor that felt authentic and familiar. It was never flashy or over the top. Instead, it thrived on warmth and relatable storytelling. Jason Bateman, as the quick-witted teenage son, brought a spark of sarcasm that balanced perfectly with the show's sweetness. The Hogan Family wasn't trying to make headlines, it was trying to make people smile, and it did that beautifully. It felt like a sitcom you could drop into anytime and feel right at home. For many viewers, it remains the definition of feel-good television. Simple, honest, and full of laughter that still feels genuine decades later. The Christmas Trolls of Timber Hollow was a woodland fantasy special that looked like it had been animated with crayons, moss, and the softest winter sunlight. The trolls were more whimsical than frightening, with big noses, fluffy hair, and oversized mittens that made everything they touched seem gentler. There was a sequence involving glowing berry lanterns that felt so enchanting people still describe it decades later. The trolls danced in circles around a fire that did not burn but shimmered like painted light, a touch only 70s animators could pull off. Even their shadows seemed to move with personality, stretching and curling like characters of their own. The story followed their efforts to protect Timber Hollow from an unexpected winter disaster while preparing for their once-a-year holiday feast. Kids loved watching the trolls tumble through snow, gather glowing berries, and sing harmonies that sounded like lullabies mixed with wind chimes. But as animation standards changed, the troll designs were labeled outdated and concerns grew about how certain features might be interpreted by modern audiences. The special was quietly shelved, never remastered, and rarely mentioned again. Still, those who saw it remember the cozy glow of its forest and the trolls' joyful determination to save their holiday. The Gumby Christmas Claytime special felt like someone crafted the entire holiday out of green clay, warm lighting, and pure imagination. Gumby and Pokey wandered through a snowy clay landscape where every footprint looked freshly pressed, every tree shimmered with hand-sculpted care, and every character had that gentle wobble unique to claymation of the era. The story was simple and heartfelt, often involving someone needing help, something going missing, or a small Christmas miracle tucked into a pocket of the clay world. Kids watched in awe as each scene seemed to breathe in slow, careful motions. But claymation was fragile. The materials aged quickly, and the original master suffered damage that made restoration nearly impossible. With no reruns and no reissued copies, the special faded from public memory. People who saw it still recall the soft glow of its world, the way Gumby stretched when he hugged someone, and the peaceful snow that looked like it might melt if you touched the screen. It's a Living offered something different, a workplace comedy centered entirely around women. Set in a chic restaurant high above Los Angeles, it followed a group of waitresses juggling their jobs, friendships, and dreams while dealing with difficult customers and flirtatious managers. The humor came from the women's quick banter and relatable struggles, but what made the show stand out was its glamorous backdrop and ensemble cast. Each character brought her own spark: the optimist, the cynic, the dreamer, and the realist. Together, they created a believable, funny, and refreshingly female-driven sitcom long before that was common. The show celebrated independence, ambition, and the power of camaraderie, all while serving up jokes with a side of sophistication. It went through cast changes and even a temporary cancellation, but its fans stayed loyal, bringing it back to syndication. It's a living managed to mix sharp wit with heartfelt moments, proving that comedy could be elegant without losing its edge. It remains one of the most underrated gems of 1980s television, smart, stylish, and filled with laughter that still feels modern today. The Brady Kids Christmas cartoon captured that unmistakable 70s blend of sunshine, polyester, and cheerful chaos, except this time, wrapped in holiday ribbons and snowflakes. The Brady Kids, already known for their groovy animated spin-off, found themselves thrown into a Christmas adventure filled with bright colors, winking stars, and guest appearances from talking animals that had no logical connection to the Brady universe. The animation had that charming stiffness of the era, where characters struck dramatic poses and held them just long enough for you to notice Marcia tried to organize the perfect holiday celebration. Greg attempted to play cool while juggling way too many tasks, and Bobby and Cindy got themselves into the kind of trouble only Saturday morning cartoons could justify. The whole special flowed with catchy background tracks that sounded like someone ran holiday jingles through a psychedelic filter. Kids adored it because it felt familiar and festive all at once, but licensing for the Brady Bunch franchise became tangled in a web of ownership changes, syndication deals, and shifting copyrights. The Christmas cartoon, being part of the animated spin-off rather than the main show, ended up slipping through the cracks. Today, it survives mostly in the memories of those who caught it at the right moment, glowing softly in that perfect mix of nostalgia and, wait, did that really exist? Bob Newhart's second hit series, simply titled Newhart, felt like a warm escape into small-town absurdity. He played Dick Loudon, a mild-mannered author who moved with his wife Joanna to run a cozy inn in rural Vermont. But instead of peace and quiet, Dick found himself surrounded by a collection of lovable weirdos, handymen, neighbors, and guests who seemed to live in their own comedic universe. Newhart's dry, understated reactions to their chaos became the heart of the humor. Every punchline landed softly but perfectly, thanks to his impeccable timing and trademark deadpan style. The small-town setting gave the show a quirky charm, full of offbeat situations and unforgettable characters like Larry, Daryl, and his other brother Daryl. Over time, Newhart became a television comfort zone, the kind of gentle comedy that drew laughter through its simplicity. And when the series ended in 1990, it delivered one of the greatest twists in sitcom history, revealing that the entire show had been a dream of Newhart's previous character from The Bob Newhart Show. It was meta before meta was even a thing, and it cemented Bob Newhart's status as television's quiet genius. The Wacky Races Christmas Rally took the show's chaotic energy and wrapped it tightly in tinsel, snowdrifts, and competitive holiday spirit. All the racers returned, each determined to win the North Pole Cup while navigating snowy roads, slippery ice patches, and the occasional mischievous elf causing mayhem. At one point, the racers skidded so wildly that even the animators seemed surprised by where the vehicles landed. The whole race felt like someone handed holiday decorations to a pack of toddlers and said, "Make it festive," then animated the results. There was a frantic charm to every scene, the kind that made you lean forward without realizing it. Dick dastardly plotted elaborate holiday-themed traps, and Muttley giggled with delight every time a snowman exploded in just the wrong place. Kids watched with wide eyes as the cars skidded, spun, and rocketed across landscapes painted in bright winter colors. It was festive, silly, and perfectly tuned to the Saturday morning vibe, but the special featured characters owned by several different rights holders, and once the contracts expired, the whole holiday rally fell into legal limbo. Attempts to re-air it were blocked by overlapping claims, leaving fans with only fleeting memories and a few blurry promotional images. Before the polished, heartwarming Berenstain Bears specials of later decades, there was a humble little first attempt at bringing Bear Country to animated life. The Berenstain Bears' first holiday animation had all the charm of a storybook being translated into motion with crayons, patience, and maybe a few cups of hot cocoa. The lines were thick, the colors slightly muted, and the characters moved with that slow, deliberate pace that made it feel like someone was turning the pages for you. Mama Bear offered gentle advice that sometimes echoed a little too loudly through the mono audio. Papa Bear, in all his enthusiastic clumsiness, tried to hang decorations and inevitably made a mess of the living room. Sister and Brother Bear scampered around in winter scarves that never seemed to stay in one place. Kids watching did not care that the animation stuttered or that the snow looked more like confetti drifting lazily downward. They cared that the bears felt like a family they already knew from bedtime stories. But when more polished versions arrived in later years, this original disappeared almost instantly. Licensing deals changed. Newer productions overshadowed the old one, and the first holiday animation slipped into the shadows of forgotten archives. It exists now mostly in memories, whispered about by fans who swear they saw a simpler, softer Bear Country once upon a Christmas time. No list of weirdly wonderful 1980s sitcoms would be complete without Small Wonder. The premise was bizarre even by television standards. A robotics engineer secretly built a robot girl named Vicky and passed her off as his daughter. The result? A perfectly deadpan child who spoke in monotone and lifted refrigerators without blinking. The show's special effects were minimal, but its heart was enormous. It mixed science fiction absurdity with family comedy in a way that was both ridiculous and oddly sweet. Vicky's attempts to fit in, learning emotions, going to school, and dealing with nosy neighbors mirrored the struggles of any kid trying to figure out the world. Audiences couldn't help but root for her, even when the jokes were cheesy or the premise stretched logic beyond recognition. What made Small Wonder special was its sincerity. It wasn't trying to be clever or cynical. It genuinely believed in the power of family, no matter how unconventional. And maybe that's why, decades later, people still remember that stiff little robot girl who somehow managed to teach everyone what it meant to be human. Long before the polished, jingling world of Rankin Bass completely took over holiday animation, there was a curious little off-brand Frosty special that flickered onto screens for a very short window of time. Frosty's magical Christmas adventure had the kind of charm that comes from trying your absolute best with whatever budget you have. And trust me, this one did not have much to brag about. Frosty himself looked slightly different from scene to scene, sometimes a bit rounder, sometimes a bit taller, and occasionally with a face that seemed surprised by its own existence. But that unpredictability was part of the fun. Kids did not care if the snowflakes looked more like falling cotton balls or if Frosty's hat tilted at an angle that defied physics. They cared that he talked, he laughed, and he led the children through a holiday adventure filled with snowy hills, twinkling lights, and the kind of magic only the 1970s could get away with. The music leaned heavily on bells, flutes, and whatever instruments the studio had lying around. The backgrounds looked like watercolor paintings that had been left out during a snowstorm. But it worked. It felt cozy, homemade, and sincere. Sadly, when the official Frosty franchise tightened its hold on the character, this little offbeat special disappeared instantly, swallowed up by licensing rights that left no room for unofficial magic. To this day, people swear they remember it, even if nobody can find a surviving tape. When ALF first landed on television screens in 1986, nobody quite knew what to make of it. Here was a sarcastic, wisecracking alien from the planet Melmac who crash-landed into the Tanner family's garage and then their lives. The premise alone was ridiculous, but that was the point. ALF, short for Alien Life Form, wasn't just another puppet or special effect. He was a full-blown sitcom character with a personality so strong it made the show feel both absurd and oddly relatable. He ate cats, argued with the family, and dropped punchlines sharper than most human comedians. Beneath all the weirdness, ALF was a story about connection, a lonely alien trying to fit in with a family that didn't quite know what to do with him. The combination of science fiction and domestic comedy was totally unique, and it worked better than anyone expected. ALF's sarcasm and the Tanner family's exasperation became a weekly comfort to viewers everywhere. Kids loved the puppet, adults loved the wit. Even today, that shaggy alien in sunglasses remains one of the strangest, most charming creations the 1980s ever gave us. If these vanished holiday classics stirred memories you thought were gone forever, share your stories in the comments below. Tap like to keep these forgotten specials alive, and subscribe so you never miss another journey into the Christmas magic time tried to erase.